Glad to have Earle back with us for the second in our three-part series on SBIR funding. Today's topic is on how to choose your topic. Half the battle in winning a grant with SBIR is choosing a topic that is appropriate for the current situation. With that, let me go and bring Earle up. He's with the Neutrino Donut. Been working with Earle for some time and happy to work with him in today's session as well. Earle, can you come up and tell us a little bit about your background, and then let's go ahead and kick into your presentation.
Hi, my name is Earle Hager. My company is the Neutrino Donut. I started it in Austin, and basically I'm working with people and figuring out how to work the government grant process. The SBIR program is based on the fact that 3% of the government's research money goes to small businesses in programs that are run by individual agencies. And it's the question that popped up in the chat, by the way. And my experience is that I've worked with people on how to commercialize their technologies, how to take it to the marketplace, how to find the right people to connect with, how to develop licensing opportunities, how to connect with different partners like 10 Capital, who can help take you through the whole venture process. And basically, if you want to talk further, we can set up time to chat after this particular program.
Great. So we're going to have Earle give a presentation. Looking forward to your questions on that. And then afterward, we'll have three presentations from startups just like yourself raising funding. Looking forward to catching up with you guys in the audience as well afterwards to answer any questions you may have. And with that, let's go ahead and kick into it, Earle.
Okay. My company is a consultancy focusing on the commercialization of science. The donut stands for the direct observation of the neutrino tau, by the way, if you're tracking that. And I've worked with lots of different grant programs and specifically with the SBIR programs. So we're talking about the SBIR processes for startups. The last time we did this, we did a longer presentation on the whole, what is SBIR and how you work with it and a lot of other information. And now we're going to be targeting a specific area of topics. We think it's more important to get into the weeds and talk about program details. We also think it's very important to give you a list of external links to resources, because I think in understanding the SBIR process, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of changes to different programs. There's a lot of summaries that change, and having access to the websites and understanding where to look and where to find things is pretty key. This is me when I met Stephen Hawking a number of years ago at Caltech. So to start off, you need to develop a 1 or 2 page summary of your project. It's got to be non-confidential. It's very important to put this together because this is the document that you're going to be using to share with people on what your idea is and how you want to work. And if you have technical papers, that's cool, but they're not necessarily required. When you're writing this, you write as if there's an expert in the field reading the document. It's important that you understand that, because you don't want to go into a long discussion of, well, this is the diabetes market and this is how big it is and blah, blah, blah. You just want to go straight into it. This is our solution. There's also, with a couple of the applications that we're going to be showing you information on today, where there's a very strict word count limit. So the first word you need to understand is the word aims. Aims are the goals of your proposal. You're going to be looking at what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, and the solutions that you're providing. Aims is a very important thing. The aims have to be solid, and they have to be seen to be of value. Specific aims, you want to figure out what you can do in a time frame. There's 2 phases with SBIRs. There's the phase 1, which is where you're going to be validating the science and the idea, and that's about $300K. And phase 2 goes into the $1.5 million range, $1 to $1.5 million range, and that will allow you to figure out how you're going to be commercializing the technology. If you're looking for ideas, if you're in the NIH space, there's a website called Bioscience Writers. There's a link to their site as part of this presentation, and they give you very specific advice and suggestions on putting together your aims. So here's an example. The aim title is in yellow. In green, you've got what it is you're trying to do. And then in red, what does success look like? And they're the three things. It's actually pretty simple to put them together, but that's what an aim has to contain, those three things. In this case, this is a heavily NIH one, but you can do the same thing with batteries and other topic areas. So we're going to be looking up SBIR topics. Each agency has their own programs: National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, Defense, Energy, Transportation, NOAA, NASA, everyone. You need to look in each of those areas to find out if there's a topic of interest. And it's important to understand this because you don't necessarily want to say, I have an idea. You need to find out whether your idea matches what they're looking for. And there's some crossover there, and there's some opportunities to work with different people. It's important to note that the except for the Department of Defense, all of these different agencies know each other, and internally within an agency, they know each other. They're friendly, and they may have suggestions for you. Within the Department of Defense, there are legal restrictions on when they can talk to you, and they will only talk to you during those timeframes. So they're not being unfriendly, they're just, it's the law. So agencies differ on how narrowly or how broadly they define their topic areas. You also have omnibus topics where you can also provide and say to the general topic area, and that gets their interest. Both are options for you. And you'll see their listings when we start looking these things up. New topics are published periodically, quarterly, several times, at least quarterly, sometimes twice a year for quarterly solutions, but they are continually being updated. So starting with the National Institute of Health, here are the list of the SBIR topics and the different program descriptions. There's a PDF file there for the program descriptions that will take you into like the National Institute of Aging and will allow you to find out what their priorities are. It will also give you the name of the program manager with NIA and allow you to send your 2-pager to NIA and say, what do you think of this? And can I get some feedback on the idea? And that's a very important part of it. So looking at the funding opportunities there under NIH, and if you follow that link, you'll also see omnibus listings as well as specific agency listings. So you can look and see where you're being hidden things and where your topic is and where it's counted within those things. Again, I wanted to put all the sites out here and all of the links so that you can follow them and get the up-to-date information. Generally, when I get questions from people, I tell them to go to these websites because things change continually. And this is where you find them. There's a website called the NIH Reporter, and that's where you can get an idea of the topics that have been funded in the past. You can find out what are the odds of winning a grant are, and generally they're 20% is what they list. Using folks like us and other people can increase your potential opportunity. There's also the fact that sometimes the idea is not necessarily a good idea, and that reduces the count. So the NIH Reporter is a good source of information on what's going on within the agency. Finally, there's a website called clinicaltrials.gov, which is not part of the government, but it lists where all the different clinical trials that are going on. So if you have an NIH idea, you can look up and find out if there's work being done in that space, where the work's being done, and what the status of it, whether they're testing in phase 1, 2, 3, or 4 compound, and where things are. There's a lot of money being made right now for people. They're taking drugs through a phase 1 and a phase 2, which proves its safety. And then they find out it doesn't do what it was supposed to do, but they'll keep it on the shelf. And then later on, they'll go back and revisit it and see if it can be used for something else. Years ago, I worked for SmithKline, and the drug Tagamet was a huge moneymaker, but it sat on the shelf for a while because they didn't know what to do with it. So jumping to the Department of Energy, which is another really big program. Here's a listing of all the different releases. They do 2 releases per year, and you can see them listed there. The current one where it says phase 1 release 2, and then the previous one, which came out the previous summer, which is release 1. So they're the listing of all the different topics they're looking for, and those PDF files have listings where you can jump around and see where your idea fits into their search. And it also will give you a listing of the program managers to give you some ideas. You want to be pretty specific about where you're finding this, and you want to make sure that what you're doing matches what they're looking for. And that's really one of the first stages, and it's pretty critical. And if you want to see what's coming up for 2025, that's being released on July 15th of this year, and that'll have all the topics for next year. To be honest, this stuff is all due by late March, early April for the current phase grant applications, and we are running really close on that. So you really need to move fast if you're going to try to do something before then. But otherwise, you might want to wait and see what happens on July 15th for the next round of funding opportunities. It's very important to get this thing right. No matter how you slice it, it's got to be right. And because if you do a good job of it, you're going to get feedback on your idea, and the feedback can be used to improve if you don't make it, the feedback can be used to reapply. So after DOE, we jump to CDMRP, which CDMRP stands for the Congressionally Designated Military Research Projects. And these are medical projects being looked at by the military. They have a lot of space in this. They will deal with neonatal issues all the way through hearing. There's one of the topic lists that they currently have right now is they're about to release a request for proposals on hearing loss, which is a very large topic for the military, because that's actually a source of disability for many folks because of just the sound, et cetera. And there's a lot of damage being done to the ears. So that is a very key part of what they're doing. I see we're loading up on questions, and I will hit everybody as soon as we get to the end of this. The National Science Foundation. This is another hot topic for everybody, because the National Science Foundation funds a lot of phase 1 projects. They will do phase 1 on stuff that is more NIH-based or DOE-based, because it's an interesting technology. They're interested in working with it. So they will look at a phase 1, and if it's a phase 2 and you're dealing with commercialization, they'll sometimes pass on it and send you somewhere else. So the portfolio of topics is listed there, and there is a thing called a project pitch. And if you go to the project pitch, you'll find that there's a very short presentation you need to put together, definition of the company, the technology, the market, the team members, and they'll have limits on the words. You could use like 500 words for each of the different areas, but it's a fairly straightforward thing to do, and they will get back to you within a week probably, and they will get back to you and they will say you're invited to apply for an NSF grant, and you have a year to respond. So this gives you some options when you're dealing with other technologies. One is you can look at the NSF and say, we're going to do this, and then maybe go over to the Department of Energy and put in something different, and the two of them together will advance your technology. Or you can put the same thing in for NSF and the same thing for DOE, and if you happen to win both of them, then welcome to the world of happy problems to have. They will then be a budget reconciliation for this. And the budget reconciliation will be focused on the fact that you don't double up on different overhead options or different testings. So the NSF, along with all of the other things, all the other topic areas, this is a good area to get involved in. The Department of Transportation comes out once a year in the beginning of the year. They actually have a month left in the application process for this year. And they generally focus on technologies that are ready to go to the marketplace. They don't do much experimentation. So if you're working with batteries, transportation is not the place to go. You really want to focus on energy for that. But that is an option. The oceanography people do stuff, and they are done for the year, and they will start up again in the fall. I've worked with some NOAA technologies when they're looking at underground. They're looking at pipelines and using underwater drones to see what's going on with not only the pipelines, but also bridges and other areas. But that's one of the options that are there, and something to consider if you're dealing with anything underwater. And the next one is NASA. NASA is a really hot topic. And there's some folks speaking later on today that are involved in Techstars. as one of the options. NASA technologies, there's a big push with NASA technologies, and part of it is because some of the things that are being created under NASA can be used elsewhere in totally different areas. I'm working with a company. Um, they're basically taking the algorithms that were developed for studying the stars and things in that area, and they're flipping that over and using it as a medical technology to measure things within the human body. And that's kind of an interesting area, but there's a lot going on in NASA. So even if it's not space related, there are opportunities to do things with space and other areas. And a big push under NASA, by the way, is they're trying to develop things to go to Mars, but at the same time, if it has an Earth application, that helps your case. So that's one of the things to consider when you're applying under NASA programs. So there's a list of the different solicitations. And if you're doing things in space, there's a Techstars group here in Los Angeles and other places. And that would be an option to consider because they're doing a lot of work in the venture capital area. And I can provide more information there. They're here in LA. There's 2 sites in Los Angeles, for example. And LA is a fun place to live, just saying. So the bottom line is don't lose your nerve. You got to jump on these things. When the opportunity comes up, you got to go all out and you've got to commit to making this thing happen because it's very important. You have a limited time frame to reply and you have a limited time frame to do the work and you've got to be prepared. This is a legitimate chessboard. You see the Black Knight has advanced, but what happened prior to this is the White Knight advanced and then retreated. Can't do that. So it all is planning. You need to get started. So
we have some questions, Earle. First one is there an SBIR website? I get the question, is there one website or does each government agency have their own?
There are overall websites, but you really want to go into the individual agencies. You want to find out what NIH is doing specifically, because that's where you're going to find the topics and information on what is happening there. The general stuff is going to be like, what is an SBIR grant and stuff like that.
Right. Next question, is there a way to save this chat? There's 2 ways to save it. One, you can just copy and paste the chat from your screen, or 2, there's 3 dots next to the chat message at the bottom. You can click on that and save the chat. So when the recording ends, it'll pop up a box with the links in it directly. Someone said they cannot save the links, but I've tried it. You can if you just cut and paste from the chat box itself. And then will the recording be available after the session? Yes, we'll email everybody the recording. And then we will also include a copy of the slides that have clickable links on it. I think Shane answered all these questions as well. And then let's see.
That was the point of the presentation, was to include the link to all of these different sites, and that's important.
Okay. So we'll make sure you guys make sure you use the save as button on the chat box and you'll get the save chat button down there and you'll be able to get that file with the links spread out. Mike, I had several questions, and first one is, how often do they change the topics on these sites? You said continuously, but should I be checking every day, every week, every month? How often do the topics really change?
The due dates are quarterly. I think in the one example I have for the Department of Energy, they published phase 1 and phase 2, which changed every 6 months, but they did list them there. You'll also see the note about the DOE stuff with the next round of information being presented on July 15th. So they're giving you a specific date. I would check quarterly. I would find out when the next due date is and check the month before. They usually start publishing information on that. If you go to the CDMRP site, they're starting to release information on their planned project requests.
And who sets the topics? Who are these people?
The agency is setting the topics because they'll decide what things are important, where they see advancement opportunities, and where they see the research opportunities. And in the case of the military, they have their priorities and they do what they want to do based on military requirements. As a side note, on the military end of things, Congress isn't really good at passing budgets. So because they're doing an ongoing series of continuing resolutions, the military gets things in and sneaks them in at our SBIR projects.
So can you talk to them and get more information about what they put up there and what they did not put up there? Are they accessible to the public in some form, conference, email, some way?
Yeah, you put together your two-pager and you can send it to the civilian agencies and ask for a half an hour phone conference call. And they do this all the time. The military will have specific timeframes and specific processes, but that's just for CDMRP. But as you go through this, and you'll see for your topic relating to batteries, there is a program manager listed. You email the program manager, send them the two-pager, and ask for a half-hour conversation.
So how can you get your idea on the list? Is it talking to them or is there some other process?
No, you want to look at their list. That's not something you have any power over. You want to look at their lists and find out where your idea fits under their lists.
Okay.
And if
All
you're
right.
when in doubt, you can also do the omnibus option, and that is the general topic area.
Great. Are there any other questions from the audience? Those are the ones I had here as well. I see a lot of people in the audience, both investors and startup, looking at SBIR. One thing I found in this past year, 2023, it was very difficult to get funding from VCs, that many went back to pursue the SBIR option because there was as much money in a phase two as there was in a VC fund in many cases. So it's certainly something available for everybody if you're in the right topic area as well. Any other questions? Any closing thoughts there, Earle?
This is a great opportunity to find funding. The other part is that if you're successful, you've been validated by some serious people and you have chances to build it up, and it makes you a little bit more attractive to the VC marketplace because you're not just an idea, you've got something going on that has been validated by science folks as well as the marketplace.
Great. Thanks, Earle. With that, let's vote on Earle there. Give us your interest if you'd like to follow up with him to learn more about his work there. With that, let's go and move into our first pitch. Today we have Buddy Lyons of Intact. Buddy, if you're ready, go ahead and kick off with your presentation. Go ahead and see if you can share your slides and see if they show up. We see them now, so you're good to go.
Thank you, Hall. I'm Buddy Lyons, the CEO of Intact Medical, and we are a digital health company that develop acoustic wearable devices for predictive medicine to predict downstream adverse events. We launched our first product last year, Previa, with 20 sales reps into a $4 billion market in the U.S. We expect to generate revenue in the first half of this year, somewhere between 5 and 10 million in revenue for 2024. And we're submitting the follow-up, the 510K for the follow-up product, which is a machine learning product, Previa Gut, expected in 2025. The big news lately is that we've applied our Previa platform to heart and lung, and it validated rapid and repeatable platform, and it strongly supports going into a wearable for the asthma COPD market. We think we can do a 510K there in 2025 as well. We got a current financing going on of 2.5 billion with a 20% discount and an $8 million cap. That was increased from 2 million. And we're going to probably close that out at the end of March. So the first solution that we have is a need for in the postoperative ileus market with 6.3 million major abdominal surgeries. Postoperative ileus is acute paralysis of the GI tract that begins 2 to 10 days after surgery. It is the most common complication in up to 30% of patients. Readmission rate is over 20%, and it's the leading cause of prolonged length of stay in 3 to 5 days. The problem right now is that you can't identify which patients are at risk for an ileus. So the reactive protocols, you force surgeons to choose a couple of things. And some surgeons do delayed oral refeeding, delayed discharge. The advantage is you have zero readmissions because they're holding patients so long. The disadvantage is you're holding up to 80% of your cases 3 to 5 days longer than necessary. In a Medicare case, you'd lose about $11,000, and those cases are those patients are in the hospital so long that you increase their risk of hospital-acquired conditions. On the other side, you have early oral refeeding, early discharge, where you have an advantage of a lower length of stay of about 5 days, but you're striving a 20% readmission rate. You're still losing about $4,000 a case, and you're increasing the risk of a adverse event happening after discharge. None of this is working very well. So Previa is precision medicine. So it proactively identifies at-risk patients on the day of surgery. It enables personalized post-op care for refeeding and discharge strategies to optimize length of stay and reduce readmissions. It's very simple to use. You place it on the patient's abdomen after surgery. It's non-invasive. And it detects an acoustic biomarker, a validated acoustic biomarker that we call MH4, that is highly correlated with the development of a postoperative ileus. And then at post-op hour 12, it provides the risk analysis of whether the patient will develop that. What does that do for the surgeon? Well, you're personalizing post-op care now on the leading cause of problems for the patient. So low-risk patients can then go have early oral refeeding and early discharge, reducing the length of stay by 3 to 5 days. High-risk patients have delayed oral refeeding because you're going to hold those patients because they're going to develop an ileus, but you reduce your readmissions from around 20% to less than 5%. You increase patient safety, and those surgeries that were losses can turn into profits in a fixed payment system like Medicare or in general in the U.S. So the value prop, we show this in several ways. We show hospitals and compare them against other hospitals on case mix index, which is simply a difficulty, how difficult their cases are. And in this particular hospital, for instance, Prevacea could reduce the average length of stay up to 4 days, lowering readmissions by 43%, reduce patient risk. And we have a very extensive budget impact model that was developed by a health economics firm, showing that in this particular hospital, just an intestinal surgery, the budget impact would be about $10 million. If you expand that out to abdominal surgery, that budget impact increases about 5 to 7 times because there are that many more major abdominal surgeries. So that could be a $50 to $70 million positive budget impact on the hospital budget. Where we really think Prevacea is going to shine is in ambulatory surgery. This has been demonstrated that it can be done. It's of surgery interest because you can do up to 30% of cases with a 1-day stay. The problem that has hindered widespread adoption of this is you can't tell which patients are and are not at risk. Prevacea has a 95% negative predictive value. So if the device says the patient's not going to develop it, it's correct 95% of the time. And those are the patients you can let go, reducing length of stay by 3 to 7 days and up to 30% of cases and saving well over $10,000 per case. We have several sites who have already are clamoring to get in this. We're rolling this out this quarter. The size of the market in the U.S. is about 6.3 million major abdominal surgeries, about a $4 billion market, similar size market in Europe. Rest of the world would have great data on, but we know it's over 10 million surgeries. The revenue model, it's a single-use device for at least 12 months. We're going to turn this into a multi-use device that's going to increase our margins at scale from about 75% to over 95%. It's sold directly to hospitals. We have reps that call on surgeons and have surgeon champions to take it to a value committee. And then ASP of about $600 that provides an ROI of greater than 10 times for the hospital. Our go-to-market strategy is that we are expanding the reps from 20 now to about 32 by year end. We're rolling out the Colectomy Quality Improvement Collaborative for ambulatory surgery this quarter, and we're guaranteeing the performance of the device, in other words. So if the device is not working and providing a benefit, we'll refund their money. The traction is that we expect revenue in 2024, 6 hospital systems. It's in various stages of back. We have a clinical trial going on right now to collect marketing data, and all those sites are very interested in bringing it in. It's actually more than $40 million. And we've had at least 6 sites so far express interest in the ambulatory colectomy. So what does this mean for us? What it means for us is if we just take the post-market sites that we have now that are interested, these are sites who are already using the product. In just intestinal surgery, it'd be a $6.5 million potential revenue addressable market. In major abdominal surgery, just for those 8 sites that are already using the product in the clinical trials, over $50 million. So we believe we're going to have a great ramp in the second half of the year. This led us to the development of Prevacea Gut, and from which we're getting Prevacea Gut. It's a different platform. It's machine learning versus feature engineering. 510K in 2025. It's the Prevacea successor. It's more accurate. It's continually improved performance, and it costs half the cost to produce one of these devices, the Prevacea device, which led us to the heart and lung data. And we're really excited about this because we've demonstrated now that it is a platform technology for rapid development, expecting a 510K in asthma and COPD in 2025. Very large markets, 12.5 million asthma patients, 15 million COPD patients. The problem here is that patient noncompliance of monitoring their own disease. We can now do that for them, and reimbursement is already in place. We have a very experienced management team that's got it all covered, plus board members who are very involved in the company who have many exits under their belts and a well-rounded sales management team from a CSO called Clinical Technologies, Inc. They're also a major investor in the company and made a major investment in the convertible note because they believe this is going to change the way post-op care is done for major abdominal surgery. Capital needs, right now, we've got the note out there. It's actually a $2.5 million note. I need to change that. And it's going to close on probably in late March with potential of maybe a $5 million round later in the year. But we'll see. We may not have to do that round depending on how well Previs DA does. And the milestones of the revenue and then the data from the collaborative, which will drive sales and the prototype. And then 2 submissions in 2025, one for Previs AI Gut and one for Previs AI Lung. So that's our story. I'd love to take your questions. Please let me know.
So first question is this a platform solution that can go to other applications and those to be done, or is this the platform itself and we're taking that to the market?
No, what we'll do is like we started off with Previs EA, right? And then we moved over to an AI platform called Previs AI Gut. Previs AI is that platform, that machine learning platform. It's a cloud-based platform with wearables. So, but Paul, we can take that platform. We've just demonstrated we can do that with some data that we have in heart and lung. The lung data is still being under analysis, but the heart data is. The lung data demonstrates that we can put a small device on a patient's heart, use their cell phone as the communication layer, Bluetooth the lung sounds to the phone, sends it to the cloud, does a calculation so that we're monitoring their disease for them. And if they start getting in trouble, well, there's always this period of where things start deteriorating, right? And then you can tell the patient, hey, if look at your cell phone. If this thing gets to this level, take your albuterol or your steroids, call my office, do whatever. That's going to keep these people out of the hospital. What they're not doing now is these people are supposed to be blowing into spirometers and peak flow meters 6 or 8 times a day, and nobody does it. And that's how they end up in trouble in the hospital. So we can apply it to other areas, heart, lung, anywhere in the body where there's actual sound to generate new products out of.
One of the questions from the audience is, how are you planning to approach the market? Are you using key opinion leaders, publications on clinical efficacy? What's your positioning here?
We have 3 peer-reviewed papers out there. The last one was on our clinical trial that what we call the optimization trial for that. We have the reason that we were at the sites we're in, like Mayo and Cleveland Clinic, is that's where the key opinion leaders are. That's one of the ways that we chose our sites doing it. We have the reps are calling directly on surgeons and appropriate administrators in the hospitals. We also we go to American Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons, that's where we got the great idea about doing the ambulatory colectomy because it was such a hot topic there. So we've got a very broad-based sales and marketing program to reach physicians.
And what's the situation on reimbursement, both current or in the future?
Well, it depends on the product. For Previs EA and Previs AI Gut, there is no reimbursement. That's one of the reasons that the budget impact model is so important. Look at it this way. We live in a fixed reimbursement system in the United States, for instance, Medicare. And so saving days, lowering the average length of stay is probably the key thing for a hospital CFO. That's how they can improve their finances better. A day in the hospital in the average in the United States is about $3,000. They're only getting, $12,000 for, say, an intestinal surgery. You're keeping them over 4 days, you're losing money, right? So that's why we come in. We can save hospitals from anywhere from 1 day. And if you save a hospital 1 day on length of stay, that's a home run. Some of these hospitals we can save 4 or 5 days. Their length of stays are so long. So the ROI on the device, even without reimbursement, is well worth it because we showed you one where it was $10 million just for intestinal surgery and could be $50 to $70 million in major abdominal surgery.
Great. Next question is, what FDA path were you on and when did you achieve approval?
Approval 2021. We were on a 510K path. We were fortunate. We got, sort of fortunate. We got FDA clearance about 6 months before we thought we were going to do it. And we weren't ready to launch at the time. And so it took us some time to get it together and start it. Launching last year was really about getting the messaging right. It's a brand new technology in an area where they're not used to a lot of technology, new technology. And so we spent like the last 6 months really honing in on that messaging. And right now it's beginning, we're beginning to see that traction. We know that all of it, like I showed you, the $50 million in potential revenue at our 8 clinical sites. We know all those sites want to use this device when the trial is over, which should be in the late first quarter, early second quarter. But the messages is really starting to take hold now, and we're very optimistic about the second half of the year.
For this round of funding, what's the use of funds? What exactly are we going to do with it?
Yeah, everything. The great thing is that our last funding took care of developing almost all the Previs AI infrastructure. So the infrastructure there is already almost all done. This funding is really about driving sales, various activities for driving sales of Previs EA. We could potentially avoid that price round later in the end if it does very, very, very well. We'll see. But we do have that, and we have that price round in our plan in the second half of the year.
Great. You have a follow-on round of funding. What's the use of those funds?
The use of those funds will be to continue to expand the revenue base for Previs EA, number one, and to move continue to move Previs AI Gut toward a 510(k) filing in 2025, developing a prototype in the Previs AI Lung product, and with a potential 510(k) there in late 2025 too. So those are the three big buckets that would go into.
And tell us more about the IP protection, and in particular, do you have any PCTs?
Yeah, we have 4 issued patents in the company. 3 of those are on the technology that underlies Previs EA, and we have those patents in every major market around the world. That some of them were filed as PCTs. So we have coverage in Europe, we have coverage in the US, Canada, Australia, a bunch of all the major markets are covered. With Previs AI, which covers Previs AI Gut and some other things, we just got that patent allowance a few months ago in the US, and we're running it through the same markets that we've got the other technologies in, patented covered around the world. So we have a great patent estate already.
And last question, who are your key competitors?
Well, there is no device out there that does what we do for Previs. If we're just talking about Previs EA and postoperative abilities, there's no device. We're definitely the first, and we don't really know of anybody who's entering the space. Our key competitor is really the status quo and what's happening with surgical techniques now, and convincing physicians that using the device can actually enhance what they're doing for better patient outcomes and for better economics for the hospital. So that's the battle we're fighting, is the educational battle to demonstrate to them that the device can help enhance what they're doing.
Right. Final comment from Amar Darkazanli of OCU Healthcare. Looks like a great partnership. We'll connect you guys afterwards, see if there's a partnering thing there as well. With that, Thank you so much, buddy, for your presentation.
Thank you, Hall. Really appreciate it.
Great. Next up is George Gunling of A Credit Match. George, if you could launch your slides, let's kick off with your presentation.
Sounds great. Thanks, Hall. Hey, thank you for taking the time about A Credit Match. I've invested significantly and now included additional investors that are primary in healthcare, understand the need, and help to refine our technology. So we're a SaaS solution for the growing healthcare gig economy coming to market this spring. Healthcare faces significant challenges. It's the worst supply chain management system imaginable, with constantly changing patient care requirements, the need to find qualified clinicians and place them quickly, and they have to be background checked and credential verified before visiting a patient. So the bottom line, is not financially viable for healthcare organizations to meet all the patient needs with a full-time staff. It's a perfect environment for the Credit Match gig economy solution. Just briefly, it's an extremely large market with a $20.5 billion in the staffing size, and the fastest growth and demand area is for temporary staffing of medical professionals. There are 2 sides to our solution. One of them is a flexible scheduling solution that enables caregivers to control where, when they work, and for how much. The other side is an optimal workforce solution for our healthcare organizations to fill specific patient care requirements quickly and more efficiently. When we look at our target market, the initial target market is the fastest growing area in healthcare, and it's also the most complex that we've incorporated into our solution, working with our advisors. So the benefits include the increased capacity, full access to the candidate profiles, reduced staff overtime and burnout, and have full access to a bench of vast needed professionals. On the other side, for the caregivers, from nurses to personal care aides, tremendous benefits of being able to be paid what you want, when you want, and to work your schedule. We're targeting caregivers that are first full-time gig workers, hourly employees seeking additional work, full-time employees looking to moonlight, retirees looking to work on a part-time basis. Through the COVID situation, there was a lot of retirement in the industry, and a lot of those retirees are 55 and still want to make some income. And then there's 55 million unpaid caregivers working through the system. And then right now there are PRNs that are working through staffing companies that take a large part of their hourly rate. One of the key things for us is a caregiver that we've incorporated in the system is a credit verified professional. A caregiver must be identity verified, background checked and monitored, license verified and monitored. And before they can look for work, match on work, accept a job, they have to be an AVP. And in being an AVP, that enables the healthcare organization to see their full profile, licenses, their background check information, and so forth. There's two sides to our technology solution we have in place. One is an iOS and Android mobile solution for the caregivers. They can set their criteria, work their schedule, see job matches based on their discipline, their availability, and distance from their home. The other side is a web portal solution for the healthcare organization to look for the discipline they need, when they need it, and it matches between the two. I won't go in details on this, but it does in the middle shows all the capabilities we've built into our technology, from matching to identity verification, to visit location verification, be able to, what we've built is the ability for them to negotiate the price and schedule through the system, and includes the payment processing and communications back and forth between the healthcare organization and the caregivers. This just gives you an idea of the market. Shift key focus on shifts, skilled nursing and hospitals, and their value to be through this market, and the ability really to replace staffing companies with a technology solution. A credit match manages those visits and shifts. That's one of the key things we learned from the industry, that therapists, nurses, and so forth going into homes to visit, but also going into rehab facilities, assisted living, they're going in a lot of cases for visits. And we've handled that through our technology. We've got a very strong leadership team. We have a great technology team. I had a software company previously where we built commercial systems in healthcare, and both scalable and running in hundreds of hospitals. And I've been able to leverage the team that worked on those to lead our effort. I have a great advisory leadership team, with Carlos being having 12 cities in Texas again. He's going to be our launch partner. We have nurses, and we have a group of guys, and we need the help to really market and take this to market. We have a very simple model, okay? We're taking 17.5% versus staffing company markup. So to make it simple, a caregiver agrees to $100 for a visit or $100 an hour. What happens is the healthcare organization pays $117.50. Once that visit or shift is completed, the money is transferred from the healthcare organization. The $100 goes directly to the caregiver. $17.50 would come to a credit match. Where we're at is we've been developing this since started in 2021, learning the industry and what the need was. And we incorporated a credit match in February of 2022. We're in beta right now with a pilot that's really going to be the first market pilot, a controlled release in that market and then full launch into that market in June. We've invested to date over $1.5 million, and we're now have incredible amount of sweat equity build up because of the team that understands the capabilities and the market potential. Where we're at right now is we've got 3 million pre-money valuation. We're looking at 250,000 units at $2 a 0.5 million post-money valuation. We have 225,000 raised to date and 275,000 currently open for additional investors. We're taking an approach to go into mid-markets initially that represents tremendous revenue potential and the ability to win those markets. And just looking at Abilene, Lubbock, and Tulsa, that are our 3 targets at the beginning here, would represent a 15 million annual market potential for those markets, just based on our 17.5%. Our exit strategy is an acquisition. Our plans right now show us with a revenue run rate of 9 million in early 2026, and the ability there to expand this nationally. So our timing is right. We're in the spot that home care continues to grow with the aging population, more healthcare services being done in the home, the desire for patients to remain in the home. The workers' increasing migration to gig work. It helps fill the gap of the caregiver shortage, and it is a positive on both sides, reducing costs for healthcare organization, increasing pay, and replaces the high-cost traditional staffing companies. If you want to hear more about a credit match, I'll put my contact information. I'd be happy to share a demonstration of the product and how sophisticated and how easy it is to use. And that's, thank you for listening and learning a little bit about the credit match and where we're going as a business.
Great. So the first question is about cost reduction. How much would a medium-sized hospital save in a year using your solution over a staffing agency?
The way we look at it is a staffing agency markup is usually in the 40 to 60% range. We're showing a markup of 17.5%. So they'd be increasing or decreasing their costs in the 30% range per person.
Great. You showed several hospitals and locations to start with. Are there any initial users or betas or anything going on at this point to point to?
Right now we're running a beta, and we're using Caprock Home Health and their staff providing us feedback, along with nurses and some healthcare organizations providing us the feedback. So what we're going to do, what we're doing now is prioritizing that feedback to say what exactly needs to be modified and changed to enhance the product before a full market release.
Great. And what kind of engagement are you seeing with it so far?
There is virtually no one we have talked to that doesn't see the need and is excited about the potential of using the system, and that is on both sides. Our nurses that are looking at this are excited about it. We've also had conversations with groups that are in different arenas for very specific needs. For example, we got a client that runs MRI clinics and said they use nurse practitioners and that they don't hire them full time. So they would basically have their staff join a credit match, and then they could schedule based on their need. Another exciting area going into the home is aesthetic injections. Another example of nurse practitioners that go into the homes to provide Botox injections and things of that nature. They are independent workers today. The doctors that are referring these patients do not want to have a full-time staff because they don't know of, the schedule and so forth. So they're excited about the opportunity to match in that arena too.
Is there an ideal customer profile here? You know, rural, suburban, urban, small, medium, large that you would go after first?
What we're really looking for is after the markets, the mid markets, and dominate those markets. And that's where we're focused at, places like Lubbock. We've got investors out of Tulsa, and they're excited about us moving into that market as soon as we possibly can.
Great. And what's the use of funds at this point for this round?
The use of funds really is to get us to revenue, demonstrate the potential in that first market, and the acceptance of the product into that market. And then we'd be looking for another round to expand into additional markets later in 2024.
And what kind of gross margin are you expecting from those first hospitals?
The numbers look pretty impressive in the 40 to 60% range.
Okay. Are there any other things you would add on to the software to enhance revenue? Any follow-on products or services that would increase the revenue?
Yeah, matter of fact, we're in talks right now with a group that will enable both the healthcare organization and caregivers to be able to order durable medical equipment and supplies at a discounted rate through a credit match.
Okay, great. I think that's all of the questions for now. Thanks so much, George. Appreciate it. We'll connect you with those expressing interest.
All right. Thank you.
And next up is Gary Callan of Cislunar. Gary, if you'd like to go ahead and launch your slides, we'll kick off with your presentation here in a moment.
Great, thanks. Let me get this up here. All right, terrific. Yeah, so hi, I'm Gary Callan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Cislunar Industries, and we are a space technology company supported by NASA, Space Force, DARPA, and the ISS National Lab. And what we're building and deploying is critical metal processing and power conversion hardware, which will enable the industrial revolution that's actually now taking shape in space. That might seem like science fiction to a lot of people who aren't deep in the space industry, but we're really seeing evidence of that happening now. Our company was actually founded with a vision to really help humanity sustainably expand out from Earth to the moon and beyond, with an understanding and a belief that an industrial economy in space is really the key to tapping into an abundant future for all of us, both whether we're in space or on Earth. So there's a couple key factors that are driving why now is the time to be pursuing this kind of opportunity. On one hand, you've got the national security imperative. There is a new space race on, and it's between the United States and our allies and China and its allies. And it's not just in orbit around the moon or around the Earth. We both want to develop that space, but it's also all the way out to the lunar sphere, putting permanent bases on the moon and trying to tap into the resources that are available there. The other side of the other driver that's happening right now is the commercial side. We're seeing a dramatic drop in launch costs, and not just from SpaceX, who you hear most about in the news, but there's a number of other companies that will be coming online soon with their launch capabilities that are driving down the cost to get up into space. On top of that, we have drop in the cost to produce new satellites. And both of those factors coming together on the commercial side are driving an exponential growth in the number of satellites in orbit today and into the future, as well as a growth in the number of things that we can do in space, things that become economically feasible. So the part that we're tackling in this industrial economy is metal processing. There are a lot of metals in space, thousands of tons of space debris alone. And there are a number of uses for metal in space. We're not going to be building large space stations without metal. So there's a lot of uses in space, and that's just one example. But these metals that are in space can't be turned into something that can be used unless they can be processed in the right shape. That's where we come in. Cislunar Industries fills that gap by being the steel mills and the aluminum smelters of this new industrial economy. Think of us as the Carnegie steel of the next industrial revolution. We take those existing space metals, melt them down in our space foundry, reform them into things like rods, sort of like this type of form factor, tubes, sheet metal, wire, all for manufacturing. And then we also make metal propellant for helping satellites move around. We really are the missing link that helps to connect space metal supply to the space metal demand. Adding a little more detail to that concept, you can see in this value chain diagram that we are really the key to the entire space resource value chain, right in the middle of that we're sort of the fulcrum between extracting resources and turning them into something useful. Our materials will actually be used to build space station platforms, build lunar infrastructure, repair satellites, and also equipment on the lunar surface. Our propellant, our solid metal propellant, will be used to fuel logistics across the whole ecosystem. And then our advanced and scalable power converters, which were developed as part of the Foundry system, we've found applications for those across this industrial space economy as well. So that fully fledged vision is certainly big, and a lot of it takes place further on down the line. But where is the demand today? I mentioned the Space Force as one of our supporters. We have a contract with the Space Force right now. They're paying us to develop a metal propulsion ecosystem, which is depicted here. What you see in this diagram, and this kind of helps you understand where we fit into the ecosystem. On the middle of the diagram, you see our logo, Sister Industries, pointing at where we would host a space foundry. We focus on the foundry technology. We don't build the real estate in space, which is the space stations and other platforms that it could be hosted on, bases on the moon. We don't build the trucks in space. Those are the spacecraft that moves things around. We just build the foundry, and that allows us to collaborate with lots of different players. And the way this works is a partner company. So on the Space Force contract, our partner is Astroscale. They have a small spacecraft that goes out, grabs a piece of debris, brings it back to the platform. There we salvage it, we melt it down, we process it into other finished goods, including metal propellant, which can then be used to refuel that spacecraft so they can go back out around again and do the job all over again. The cool thing is we only need 10% of the mass or less of that object they've retrieved turned back into propellant or fuel for the mission to fuel that next mission. The rest of it is left over to process into fuel or propellant for the Space Force, which is why they're interested. They want to have mobility in space, just like they do on Earth, or for building materials to build large structures. And that could be commercially, that could be for the DoD as well. At the core of of this business concept is our patented modular space foundry. This patented modular space foundry uses electromagnetic induction to melt the metals down, and then the same magnetic fields are used to replace the effects of gravity. And when we think about melting metals on Earth, gravity helps to move the molten metals through the process. In space, we don't have that benefit, to some extent on the moon, but not in orbit. So we use the electromagnetic fields to control the movement of the molten metal and to form it into its final shapes. When we built our first foundry prototype on our first NASA SBIR, we could not find a power converter on the market that would do the job for us and then also scale to a space application. So we ended up building our own. It turns out that the custom power converter we built to run our space foundry is really differentiated in today's $500 million market for space power converters. We've already penetrated that market with our first sales last summer, and the same customer is coming back for another batch already this year. And we have so far demonstrated that our power systems can be used for our foundry, for a high voltage in-space welding application. That's the one that we sold last summer. And then also for Hall effect thrusters. We actually partnered with Safran Space, a large French space company, to test their 2.5 kilowatt Hall effect thruster with our power processing unit, or our system used as a power processing unit. So it opened up, showed that could work for that application. And we're seeing a lot of demand from a number of different potential customers for that application and a number of other use cases as well as we go into 2024. It's also, this area of space subsystems is showing up again and again in the media as a new hot area for space investment. So we think the time is right to start getting into this market as it starts to grow. The market opportunity we see, as I mentioned, we see a $500 million market existing today. 400 million of that is just for the power processing units for high power electric propulsion systems. And then as we go into the 2030s, this really grows, to $200 billion size market or more when we talk about the lunar surface and processing materials and all the power applications that are there. Really, if you think about the new industrial economy emerging, having a strong position in both power and metal processing really puts us, cornering a key piece of the market. We have great traction so far with $3.7 million in government contracts to date with the Space Force, NASA, the ISS, and DARPA. We have over $200,000 in commercial revenues from the sale of power converters and engineering services. And we have partnerships with a number of companies, and this is really just the tip of the iceberg, that are really important in the space industry, both large and small. So as another piece of traction, our most recent contract win was this DARPA Luna 10, which is all about studying a lunar economy that would emerge in the next 10 years. And I just show this to show you some of the other major companies that have been paired with us on this project. We're the one startup here that is still available for investment. The rest of these are major players. Some of you could buy their stock on the open market, but these are all big companies. Our approach to the market today is to use the government funding, which they're interested in continuing to provide to us, to advance this foundry technology to process metals, and then take the power converter that we've developed out of that work and sell that to the commercial market. That'll be sold on a per unit basis. That's the basic model here, subsystem sales, and the market is growing rapidly. We also will continue to sell engineering services to strategically aligned partners that need to do need our help doing work and in a complementary way. Of course, our big vision is to operate space foundries, which will leverage that power converter technology to function like a combination of a salvage yard and a steel mill. We'll be taking in raw materials on one end. We may have to pay for them, or we may get paid to take them, depending on the circumstances. And then we'll be processing those, adding value, and selling them to customers on the other end. We have a strong team of experienced leaders. I have a finance background. I have a CFA, so I've done both corporate finance as well as portfolio management. Our CTO, Joe Pawelski, is a super maker with lots of patents and an exit to his name. Our COO, Lee, has a background as an executive in a multi-billion-dollar upstream oil and gas operations. Walter Schroeder, our CIO, has deep and broad technical and business development experience. And Toby Mold, our other co-founder, is a space engineer and a scientist with space mission experience, specifically in debris removal. And we are right at the beginning of this massive trend. It's truly a massive opportunity presented in front of us. It's been estimated that the space economy will grow to $4 trillion or more by 2040. That's a 10x growth from where we are today. This kind of growth in space is going to be built on new space infrastructure, and metal processing is one of those key enablers of that infrastructure across the space economy. I can dive into some of these details about the revenue by category in the Q&A if there's interest, but this kind of breaks it down between different categories of revenue. We are looking right now to raise $2.9 million in a seed round. We have our first tranche of this round. We've gotten $540,000 committed to date, and our second tranche is starting right now, and we'll hope to close out that round by the end of the quarter, ideally. So what this will be used for is to finalize our government matching, which is what our first tranche allowed us to do. Will allow us to grow the sales, principally to grow the sales and get the power converter business off the ground and validate that market is in fact as big as we think it is. And that will set us up for the next round of funding that we'll need to grow that power converter business to a fully fledged manufacturing capability. And with that, I think I'll turn it over for questions. Thanks for your attention.
Great. The first question is, we see you have contracts, but did you ever get any grants? And if so, how much?
Right. So all of our contracts so far are SBIR contracts. They frame them as contracts. Some investors consider them as grants. We're on a phase 2 with NASA right now. We're on a directive phase 2 with the Space Force. And we have an ISS National Lab grant, which is included in this non-dilutive funding of $3.7 million. That was $330,000. And our DARPA Luna 10 project is an OTA. So it's a contract under the OTA structure for the military. And that was for $500,000. So $1.7 million for Space Force, a little under $1 million to date for NASA, and 500 for DARPA and 330,000 for ISS.
Great. So for your partners in the foundry market, are there any structure around it, such as a consortium, or is there any licensing of technology? Is there any commitment among the groups, or is it just a paper relationship?
I mean, we have, you know, when we look at this, the traction slide, you can see the companies that were on our projects to date. So all these companies are subcontracting to us on these projects. If you look on the far left column, you know, these logos here, Astroscale, Sierra Space, for example, NanoRacks, they're all contracted to us as the prime and them as the sub. In that context, there's a contractual relationship. The other partnerships are more MOUs, LOIs. They're not binding, but in a way, we kind of like it that way because we don't want to be married to any one player. We want to sell our stuff to all the space station companies. We want to sell our steel and and aluminum to all the companies who want to build stuff. So we don't really want to get married to anyone, and you know the other companies understand that and are happy to play ball that way.
Great. Next question is around some of the technology. Seems like it could have been licensed for non-space applications. Is there any thought about licensing some of the conductance and other things you're doing?
Yes, we have definitely given that some thought. There is some interesting opportunities that have been brought to us by some advisors for taking this to the terrestrial electrification of the grid, you know, kind of situation where we can take the converters and apply them to building out solar and other kinds of electrical power build out for renewables, as well as other applications like using the converters in, you know, towers for cell phones, which I understand mass and weight is kind of a factor for construction, but we're still early days on exploring some of those opportunities, but they could be quite large, really. So we're definitely open to looking into that.
The last question is, you're raising money with the government match. How much is the government match funding there?
So we have a phase 2 SBIR extension for our NASA SBIR. It's worth $375,000. We should hear about that soon, whether we got that match. The $540,000 we got committed was partly to help confirm the investor side of that match.
Okay, great. I believe that answers all the questions today. I want to thank you for the presentation, Gary. I want to thank all of our presenters, George, Buddy, Earle, for your great presentation as well. With that, we'll go and wrap up for today. We'll be back yet for a third installment of SBIR funding here in a few weeks, and we'll be updating you. Everybody, we will get the recording, you'll get the slides, you get the links, and we'll follow up with you for next steps to help you on your project as well. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and want to thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot.